It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Thanks for joining with us. I appreciate you riding with us this morning. It's Monday, and we're going to cover a few topics that should have been worthwhile to be addressed over the course of the weekend, but we weren't able to do that. And, of course, the mainstream Ministry of Propaganda is not inclined to provide you with any information that does not lead to their pre-desired conclusion. You know, some of the things that are happening out there are all noose tighteners. And when I say that, I mean that slowly but surely through incrementalism, we're seeing the decline of those things which, you know, heretofore we would have thought could never possibly have, you know, been done in our country. But it's done at such a slow pace. It's done at such a slow rate. It's done secretly behind closed doors. We don't actually, you know, see it until sometimes it's too late. One of those things is the ATF's new gun registry that we're already halfway through, and I haven't heard a squawk about it. Not a word. What do I mean by that? Well, the new gun registry that's going into effect on June 15th of this year, which was begun in April under a policy for public comment, filed in the Federal Register, which is where most treason takes place. I got to say, most people don't even know what's happening. And what is happening? Well, let's make it clear. If you buy two weapons from any licensed firearms dealer, now your information will be given to the ATF to evaluate you as to whether or not, and built into a permanent database. And see, the law states that you can only have a database for background checks that exist for 24 hours, and then the records have to be purged. But in this case, those records will be now permanent if you purchase two or more firearms, because they're going to evaluate you for your terroristic tendencies or whether or not you're a straw purchaser. This started down in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas after Fast and Furious, with the assumption that what they were going to do was test and find out who was, you know, doing gray market purchases for Mexican cartels, when in fact it turned out to be our own government. But whatever. You see, the rule was never lifted, and now they're going to implement it nationwide. We're going to talk more about it, and I want you to understand the depth of how far this law is going to go to limit gun purchases in the United States and or be used as a means to develop a national registry. What part of shall not be infringed don't these people get? Our second topic, a record forfeiture haul, civil forfeiture, done without even so much as a ticket being issued, without so much as a single conviction, without so much as a judge ever hearing it, without any information whatsoever, other than, if you want your stuff back, you got to take us to court. It's an article that I found over the course of the weekend, which I've been telling you guys about for years. Policing for profit. And now it's actually hit Fox News. Here's the problem. In 1985, there was only $94 million that was brought in and shared amongst the traders and the thieves who were playing the game. In 2013, it was a whopping $6.3 billion with a B. Now, so you understand the implications of that. By 2020, this will be an unbelievable and stunning, assuming that we just continue on the course we've been, $20 billion a year industry. It is the new cartel. Hello. We're going to explore it because I got to tell you, America, your silence, your lack of outrage, your lack of demanding that it stop is why it's growing, not like a cancer, not like a weed, like a virus. Our third topic, illegal immigration. They're about to reduce the statute of limitations to 2 weeks. Now, this will be another executive order from the dictator-in-chief. Previously, the argument was that if you were in the country and you'd avoided capture for 3 years, you were beyond the statute of limitations for deportation without a hearing. How that works, I don't know. Now, they're actually going to reduce that down to 2 weeks. So, for argument's sake, just assuming that you've made it 15 days sleeping in someone's basement or hiding in a barrel or whatever the heck it is you did to avoid capture, you can't be removed and deported. Not without going through the full constitutional due process that isn't really due process at all, nor is it constitutional. Our fourth topic will be Dean Garrison's letter. And I got to tell you, why I want to review this is because I think it's imperative that every one of you take a look at yourselves very, very closely in the mirror. And the time to do that is now. We are out of time for us individually to avoid confrontation, to be afraid to speak, and we're going to take a look at why. Let's take our first topic because I got to tell you, most Americans have no idea. It was never publicly announced. The Ministry of Propaganda has been dead silent. The new gun registry that will create a brand new record anytime anyone purchases at least 2 firearms will become permanent. Now, the argument is, again, the treasonous use of national security as the excuse. And folks, if you're not tired of hearing national security used synonymously with the phrase or replacing the phrase treason, then you're lost to us. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is going to expand this program that they started down in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, and they're going to expand it to all 50 states. What is the program? Well, after Fast and Furious, which was caused by our government, which was caused by the ATF themselves, so if this doesn't fit the Hegelian dialectic of create a problem, provide the solution, and then implement it, strengthening your own power while simultaneously robbing basic human rights from the people, I don't think anything else does. The ATF was buying guns from legitimate dealers, and they were doing so at gunpoint to the dealers. The dealers knew that it was wrong, but they were told by the ATF, you're going to cooperate with this program or we'll yank your license. And so they played along. And they were told that this was to catch guns being sold to drug cartel dealers or drug cartel members in Mexico. Of course, the ATF had no intention of actually catching anybody. Their goal was to create enough outrage that Americans would demand that guns be stopped from being sold in the United States. That was the game. It was a false flag operation. It all exploded and was exposed when Americans started being killed. Now to this date, we have hundreds of Mexicans that are dead. The Department of Justice's Eric Holder, the number one law enforcement officer in the country, has been charged and found guilty for criminal and civil contempt of Congress for failure to provide the documentation so that Congress can oversee and investigate what he did in concert with the ATF. F Troop, that's the ATF, they're now instituting a new rule that says if you lived in California, Arizona, New Mexico, or Texas, and you tried to buy 2 guns, you had the ATF was notified so that they could do an extra look-see at you to determine whether or not you might be buying guns for someone else. It's a straw purchaser. Well, it's been so successful, translated not, that they've now decided to roll it out in all 50 states. And this is exactly what I mean by incrementalism. You see, nobody screamed bloody murder about those 4 states when they did it there. So now they're just going to shove it down everybody's throat. The federal government has no right to know what you're buying. That's an infringement. And hearken back to the words of the Second Amendment. Shall not be infringed. Shall means must not, cannot. Under no circumstances can any infringement be placed upon the purchase, the possession, the bearing of arms. That's pretty clear, folks. One of the clearest of all of the 10 amendments. And yet one of the ones that's fought over the most by elitists, tyrants, statists, and those who would strip you of your ability to defend and protect yourself. Now, just for the record, Mexico is legalizing vigilantes to fight the drug cartels because it's so bad, their army, their police, they can't take it anymore. If you've ever wondered why we have a Second Amendment, here's the answer. Oh, and by the way, the cartels that in Mexico they're talking about are drug cartels. But the cartels in this country, which our founders warned us about, should be obvious to you. Who are they? Well, let's start with the DEA, who's the number one drug dealer in the world. Let's start with the ATF, the cartel that strips you of your Second Amendment rights. Let's not forget about anything else in the national government and every other extra-constitutional federal and state agency. You want me to name them? Nah, we don't have the time. You already know who they are. It's every one of these 3- and 4-letter curse words that litter our government. Let's not forget, by the way, about the Federal Reserve Bank, the banking cartel that has been systematically stripping Americans of wealth since 1913. Let's not forget about the agri-tyrants, the Dows and the Monsantos, and all of these companies that are poisoning our food supply for profit. And let's not forget about the pharma tyrants. These are the ones who are injecting 50% of the world's drug supply into the good old US of A. Did you know that 50% of all the drugs produced globally are taken by Americans? Hello? Hello, let me wake you up out of your drug stupor. Hello? Put away the antidepressants and step away from the pill weapons. They are being used to induce you into a psychotic and or a submissive state where the mainstream ministry of propaganda can then utilize the suggestive state that you are in with their propaganda for you to think and act a certain way. You want to know why you're fearful? Because they want you to be. That would be a good start, by the way. Should keep us all busy for a while anyhow. That's quite a list. See, the truth of the matter is this. There are only two types or two groups or two reasons, I should say, why a gun registry can be and should be created. One is for the purposes of taxation. And God knows we've already got enough of that. The second reason is a compiled list of who owns so that they can either confiscate them or punish those people. There is no other reason. Every government that has created a list of gun owners in the past 100 years has eventually used that list to confiscate those weapons. The 1968 Gun Control Act is a direct, verbatim takeaway from the Gun Control Act issued to Nazi Germany. Don't believe me? Go look it up. The 1968 Gun Control Act was taken verbatim, translated from German to English, and then passed here. The only difference between the two is about switchblades. They allowed them, we don't. Hello? The words are verbatim taken from Nazi Germany, ladies and gentlemen. I might add that this is an extension, and this gun registry that they're going to impose on Americans, lawful, legal-minded Americans who actually go and buy guns through instead of out of the trunk of a car. Going forward, I don't own any guns, and I cannot legally own one because I'm a felon over a gun by the same ATF that is about to impose their tyrannical and wrap their tyrannical steel-encased hands around your neck. But if I were an individual who could own firearms, I would never buy a gun from a gun dealer. I would buy them at a gun show. I would buy them from a neighbor, a friend. You see, the principle of what's going on here is a violation, even, by the way, of the Heller case, which was heard in the Supreme Court and won. Gun ownership and handgun ownership are a constitutional right. And the government has no right to limit that. Now, their argument will be, well, Heller didn't say we couldn't build a database. Well, what's the point of the database if you're not going to use it? Well, we're not saying we're going to use it. Then why do you have to have it? Well, just in case. In case of what? You see, they quickly run out of arguments and rationale to be able to justify their unconstitutional action. Now, this is a direct result of Obama and his plot and his plan and his open, blatant statements of treason. What did he say? He promised he would go around Congress if they wouldn't do what he wanted to do. And what he wanted was universal background checks. Congress said no at the pressure of American people, who called their senators in massive numbers and said, don't you dare. President Barack Obama lied to America and said 90% of America wants common sense gun control. 90% of America wants no such thing. 90% of America can't determine and decide whether or not we should have eggs or toast for breakfast. How can you possibly expect 90% of America to agree on guns? 90% of America doesn't agree on whether or not the sun comes up at the same time. What kind of a blatant, bald-faced lie was that the Ministry of Propaganda refused to expose? And what kind of a sucker are you to have believed it? You see, what you buy and how you buy it and where you buy it and whom you buy it from and what you own is no one's business but yours. And if you're not going to pick up the telephone and you're not going to call your senators and you're not going to call your House of Representatives members and you're not going to do those things that are absolutely required for you to do to participate and play an active role and become a functional member of society, if you want to sit on the couch and apathetically wait until they come and kick in your door to get them, then you say, I'll fire then. The hell you say, you're chicken. That's the truth. If you're unwilling to stand up now when there's no blood flowing and you can do so peacefully, then what makes me think you're going to stand up when they're pointing a gun at you or your family, or they're threatening to put your children or your wife or your husband in prison? You see, you're a liar, and you're a liar to yourself. And apparently you always have been. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the truth, and everything else that you've been telling yourself for all this time is all lies. This is an indictment against America and against, frankly, you. If you have not stood up, if you have not taken an active role, then I don't know what to say to you. Still, if you will not fight for the right, when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. There may even be a worse case. For you may have to fight when there is no hope of victory, because it is better to perish than live as slaves. Well, let me tell you what I think. I think most Americans are going to crawl down in a hole and say, "Here you go, master. Let me give them to you because you're right. I shouldn't own them, and I'm afraid of you." That's what's going to happen. And you will damn the rest of us in the process. You see, folks, what you don't realize is the republic is gone. There is no more Constitution. There is no more rule of law. It's gone. The republic is dead. And it happened on your watch. Long live the republic? What republic? It's gone. It's dead. And it happened on your watch. That should tell you something. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. When we come back, we're going to tackle the record forfeiture haul. Civil forfeiture, the right of government to step in and take your stuff. Not with a trial, not even with a charge. They just seize it and take it and say, if you want it back, you got to go to court. $6.3 billion last year alone. It's the best new industry. Stealing from American people. Gangland thuggery protection. That's what it is. And again, it's happening on our watch, folks. I don't know what to say. I think we're finished as a nation. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now.